In our milieu and in our circle, there are two types of people that are always in pursuit of perfection with an unfortunate third. And today I am going to bring you that unfortunate third because the first might be the bodybuilder, the fitness individual who's chasing physique up to the utmost degree. The second one might be the speed shooter who wants to have that sub-second reload so reliable he can do it even when he's hungover. But the third is the third type of perfection chaser that we see oftentimes is the butt of the joke, and that is the person who's trying to perfect, of all things, their gear. So let me start this episode with an element of self-denigration because I am proud to announce that I am finally able to release the Squid Scrim Kit with AXL Advanced. We have been working together on this project for over a year, almost two at this point in time, and they have gone through iteration after iteration with me to finally bring this new idea to the table. See, back in the early days of 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, we saw ghosts of not only the Cold War, but World War I return in the form of trench warfare. See, as the hubris of mankind manifests in the horrors that it inflicts on one another, so we see this repeating pattern of what is old is new again. And you started seeing viper hoods and scrim kits and different forms of camouflage return to some form of common use. And so that was something that led to, well, the inspiration for this product. Some of you are familiar with my background, but for those of you who are not, it doesn't matter. The use of night vision isn't really new to me. And rather, I've been wearing one of these more complicated helmet systems for the better part of 16 years now. I don't know if I can do math properly. But what I set out to do and what we recognized is that we were seeing old scrim get reintroduced to the helmet that did not work with the equipment that we used. See, as we know, what you see on a helmet or a helmet-borne system is really not as simple as it used to be. Instead of ace of spades for psychological effect, we have illuminators, lights, lasers, strobes, battery packs, and so forth. And for the longest time, as long as I've been able to see it, the classic example of a scrim kit is nothing more than a bushy-looking hairnet that you strap around the top of the helmet. And that might work well, sort of, for camouflage, except for it creates a couple of problems for contemporary issues. One of them is now all of the vital equipment that you have on your helmet is no longer usable. And if you were to say gain camouflage but lose your strobe, or lose access to your strobe in an intense environment, you're going to heighten the possibility of fratricide. Now, there might be a long-winded argument about what is near peer and what is not near peer and the use of IR and the use of night vision, but let me illustrate it as simply as I can from where I come from, and that is, if you're going to use your strobe, you better be willing to use your laser, and vice versa. Once the advantage of surprise is gone completely, then that advantage of not using a strobe for one reason or another starts to decrease dramatically. And this is more of an argument for a use case. But above all things else, and in all examples of this, when I'm under the heat of the moment in a high-intensity environment, at night, gunfights, whatever, the last thing I want to be, one of the last positions that I ever want to find myself in is where I can't get access or I can't use effectively that one piece of equipment that might save my life. I do believe in something more like the 90-10 rule. It's sort of an adaptation of the 80-20 rule, which is it doesn't matter until it really does. And what that means and what that sounds like, what that looks like, is I might have equipment I have access to that I very rarely ever use because it might be specific to a certain use case. It might have a very direct application. It might be designed to really fix one problem and one problem only. And so it doesn't matter all the other times. A tourniquet is not valuable to me really until I'm in that one situation where I have a severed artery and I need to stop the bleed as quickly as possible. And a strobe is one of those examples. And so what we did is we set out to solve 3 problems with this new form of scrim. And yes, you have seen the same material, the same scrim kit, in quite a bit of our social media. The scrim itself, the 3 goals or the 3 things that we wanted it to accomplish is 1, we want it to work with modern lighting and modern helmet-borne systems. We wanted it to integrate well into the equipment that you already use instead of becoming one more piece of equipment to fight through and try to minimize and maximize and trim and cut and whatever. So that's the first part. The second part is that I wanted it to stay native to the helmet. And so when I undo my scrim, I have 2 pods here that remain on the helmet. And those 2 pods become the storage location for the scrim. And why would I want to keep it on the helmet as opposed to, say, just take it off and put it in my pocket? Well, the first answer is it's easy enough material to lose. If you have used the more hairnet style scrim, you most likely have at least lost 1 or 2 sets of it in, well, higher intensity moments when you're running through the woods, when you're trying it out, and so on and so forth. Plus, that type of environment it's easy enough to lose too many things. And you can think of this in 2 ways. 1, you're a team leader in the unit and you don't want your privates to lose their equipment. Or 2, now I have the option as I'm moving through different environments. And this again speaks back to something that we're familiar with the conflict in Ukraine, but also other places as well, even here in the United States. Now, the third part and the third reason that I designed it this way addresses a more contemporary problem, and that is oftentimes you see so much gear designed for a specific use case. And that makes sense within those environments. Now, that may sound like a broad painting brush, but let me be clear. We are seeing these types of environments, or at least I have been seeing these environments in my own thing, which is part of the inspiration, where a person begins in a rural, foliage-thick, grassy, wooded environment. Maybe it's a copse in the Eastern Europe. It's in a more of a jungled area in Afghanistan, or it's this grassy rural area, and the infiltration will take place over this kind of space of land that involves plenty of opportunities where that camouflage would be desired. See, on your infiltration, on the infill to the location, and on the movement to the objective is, as we're understood, one of the more dangerous places. It's where an ambush would likely be set. So a helmet without anything to break up its silhouette is easier to spot by the human eye. So any camouflage, anything that breaks up that round, potentially shiny from use helmet, anything that breaks up that pattern is going to be helpful for the person wearing it. But the problem is the opposite is true once they get into an urban environment. In an urban environment, you don't want to be looking like a walking, moving bush. Memes aside, yes, put googly eyes on your ghillie suit and see how well you blend in Verdansk or whatever it is. But that illustrated the point was, as we are seeing not only individuals become more capable, not only with their equipment, but with what they are doing, we wanted to create a scrim kit that serves the best strengths that they have, and that is adaptability in the mission, but also capability across the operation. So, what did that mean? That meant we have a scrim kit that will stay native to the helmet. So now let's take a minute to put together one of these kits as you will receive it from AXL. So let's start with what comes in the kit. From AXL, you will receive the yoke with pods, your scrim, and 4 of these sections of bungee. To install your Squid Scrim Kit, take your helmet, and if you have a battery pack or something else on the back here, simply move it out of the way because we want access to this part of the Velcro. This part is what we're calling the yoke. Take that yoke, and you can see that with the ops core, it's sort of designed to, it's designed to somewhat match the Velcro that you have available, and one of the advantages is you can use this to help protect your cables. So I'm going to take my battery pack and I'm going to put it back down where I like it, and then set this in place. For me, I like to snug these back a little bit so it'll fit multiple sizes of helmets. But now my pod is going to fit naturally on the sides of the helmet. Now that might be the easiest part. We've added tie downs to the front, and you can tie them down in multiple ways. One way that I would like to do is I like to run it through my side pieces here, my rails. You can also loop it through around your front studs, or if you wanted to, you could even attach it to these front hooks as a bit of a tie down itself. For that is only really going to be working out well on the ops core. So let's try out a couple options here. Conveniently, for me, it also matches up with other sets of my lighting as is. Now inside the pod, you're going to find another tie down at the base, and that's going to be attached, sewn in, and that is what we're going to attach our scrim to. If you want to go lighter or heavier, you get to change out the scrim as you want to. For this case, I'm going to be using BDU, but you can build it whichever way you want. You can have, in the future, as we add out more colorways, you can add different colors to it. So I could have BD, or I could have my Ranger Green pods with like an arid camo if you're law enforcement in the southwestern United States. But this is what we're going for here. So making sure that's firmly attached, that Velcro is firmly attached to, or the hook and pile tape if you're in the military. Geez, naming conventions. Making sure it's firmly attached and set in. What I'll do is I'll take one of my longer strands, and you can attach this multiple different ways to fit your needs, but at least for me and my house, we are going to do it like such. Top to bottom, invert, top to bottom. And from here, I'll take one of my bits of scrim, and you can see this is a pretty cherry material. It hasn't really seen the horrors of war yet. Now, depending on how densely you want this foliaged up, so to speak. There you go. Now I have the starter of one side. Take that other strand, get myself some working material. As we wrap here. Even it out a little bit. I would recommend putting some sort of finishing knot on the end here. And now have half a BDU pattern scrim kit on there. I like to wrap it around the front of my night vision because that helps me break up the pattern of the night vision. You can do you can also come down here. If you wanted to attach it to the front clips, you could. If you were to say take off your night vision, let's see. Come on, buddy. So let's say you've taken your night vision off for the day, or for you've taken your night vision off for a while, or you're not using any right now, but you still have a helmet. You can, if you have clips on the front like yonder, you can simply run them through there. And that gives you something to break up your silhouette. There you go. Take my other side for the tie down. I want to repeat that on the other side, but you don't need to sit here on a video and watch me do it. So let's do a time skip on that. Now I've got 4 segments of scrim on this loop, on this tentacle, and I'm just going to take it, I'm going to run it again into my tie down so that so that it's easy to stow. And from here, same thing as the last. Although I find these easier when I do them simultaneously. Difference here, if I leave my piece on the front, if I leave this tie down on the front, it's easier to find the center. I just find it easier to, like, okay, so I did not center this one. I want to do it right here. There you go. So now I've got my so what you see there is I can run different color scrim kits. I can run different colorways, whether I need to fit within a uniform, or if I am moving to different environments, or if you're in a location in the world that changes seasons. Now you have the option to switch between multiple options, or now you have the option to switch between multiple colors without having to redo the whole thing. And then if you just want to stow it, there you go. Same thing on the other side. Try to find the halfway point. Balance your scrim. Fold it in half. I can zip this a little bit, and I just tuck it like a burrito. As weird as it is, that's how it works. Do you tuck a burrito like that? Please don't answer that in the comments. There you go. Boom. Now, for tie downs. I can do this multiple ways, but for this case, I would want to run it through something like this. I can run it around something like this. Or I can tie it down. I mean, I really have multiple ways to tie this down, which has really been an advantage. Like, if you're using a bump helmet, you can thread it through. You can tie it down that way. If you're not using a bump helmet, you can go like this. I can even extend or improve my whole network here. And I could tie it down multiple ways. I would recommend to the rail, just because that's going to be the most robust. But we have included these tie downs for you, specifically for this purpose. Okay, let's put those bad boys back on. It's starting to feel naked without it. There you go. Now, How do I want to do this? Do I want to tie it down here? Do I want to tie it down here? Do I want to remove my rail and tie it down there? We've left this option open-ended for you to tie it down to your helmet as you see fit. I'm going to tie mine down to my rail because that is the location that's going to be the most secure, and I plan on using these pretty regularly for the foreseeable future. These tie downs will allow you to jump them. They will be jumpable safe for static line as well as free fall. The tie downs will also keep these pods from getting peeled back when you're moving around in thicket environments. In a thick environment, whatever do you mean by that? For those who pick up one on December 19th, 2025, we are giving away randomly an Alpine White edition as well. So you might just find, in addition to your multicam kit, a multicam Alpine to blend in with the snow, or go hunt yourself a snow bunny. That sounds terrible. The Squid Scrim Kit will fit on multiple types of helmets, whether they're going to be of the ballistic variety or your bump helmets. And you can use the tie downs to weave within those air vents that are on top of your bump helmet to get a really nice, tight, secure fit. And because of the way that it's shaped, it's a yoke that stretches across the back, kind of like this. You can make some adjustments to whether or not how large your helmet is or how you're going to have it ride lower or higher as the user gets to choose. I've had a year of time to test this product out on my own, and when I say that, it's kind of interesting as I'm not doing a review on it, but I'm presenting to you something that I have been working on and that I've created with AXL Advanced. I approached a friend in the industry a number of years ago with the concept, and they were kind enough to connect me to AXL, and when I presented the idea to them and sent them an early version of it, they were very kind and quick to take it on as what we thought was, quite frankly, not necessarily a revolution in scrim, but a scrim kit for the contemporary age, for the world that I have experience in, that we work in that not everything that we have on our helmet is it's not the same as it was many years ago. Helmets are now carrying communications equipment and equipment to your ear protection and lights and signals and so on and so forth. And what we wanted to make sure is that the end user could camouflage their helmet if they wanted to, without worrying about losing the equipment itself if they took it off. And that camouflage would still work with the urgency needed for the environments that those signaling devices are used for. This kind of goes back to an explanation that while putting a strobe on our helmet, it's an identifier to some cases. One of its primary use cases is avoiding fratricide, and under the heat of a battle, or in the heat of even small unit tactics, one of the last things that you want to be able to, one of the last positions you want to be in, is that you're making a flank in a react to contact, and you can't effectively communicate to your team where your limit of advance is, where your team is, and that is why we wanted to make this fit for the current end user, which is another buzzword that the industry likes to talk about. The Squid Scrim Kit is releasing today, December 19th at noon Central on AXL Advanced's website, which will be included below. They'll be available for $99.99 or just $100 if you want to pick one up for yourself. They are available now. This is not a pre-order. So while we may not get them to your house before Christmas, may try, they will be here for the new year. And you can see us and find us at SHOT Show this year, as I will be walking the floor, and we will be able to, we'll be looking forward to meeting some of you out in the field, so to speak. As the year comes to close, though, I do want to take a moment to be thankful. And I want to take a moment to be thankful particularly to you who supported the show, whether through your viewership or purchasing some of our merch over at redactedllc.com. The store is currently closed. I intend to open it in the near future with a new array of gear and things to just keep the show rolling. In addition to that, I am a middle-aged white man, and so of course I have to run a podcast, and a part of that is being thankful that you have provided this environment that I can talk about these things that I think are important that oftentimes get missed in the military-industrial complex, or even that civilian industrial complex, the things that lead to moral injury and issues. Otherwise, as we move forward in this world, I think we can safely expect that what was simple is going to become more complicated. We've seen this in the example of decentralized terrorism. The world that many of us grew up with before 9/11 even, or in the early throes of 9/11, really set the stage for the world to be focused on some form of terrorism. And yet what I think was not translated well in that era, especially from the early GWOT into now, is how decentralized terror has become. We might oftentimes talk about the value of decentralization when it comes to not becoming overtly dependent on things like the grocery store or the infrastructure that was provided to us as sort of a given. There's a dark side to that too, and it's not that these two things are mutually exclusive. It's that one of the things that terrorism had to respond to, especially you can read this in Brave New War by John Robb, is how in the Middle East, this in his case example was Iraq, it was that terrorism had to decentralize. They had to break apart the networks so there wasn't some easily definable roster by which to, say, arrest people or continue down the pipeline in like an Assassin's Creed fashion for those of you who played video games when you were young. Another way that this is played out, though, is the dangers of self-radicalization. And I think this comes at a combination of the internet, and it comes where the internet, the idea of the internet has spread across the globe, whether that is just through forums or social media, or the ability for people to communicate with another. And another example that has been illustrated in actually the development of AI. And while I think so much of like the Joe Rogan level attention to AI has been focused on these kind of grand narratives where something like artificial intelligence might hijack certain systems, or it might create an environment where, you know, the idea of technology is hostile to human life, or even another example of it would be just like mass manipulation through media. One part that I'm not saying it goes missed, it gets missed by other people, and that's not really the point of saying, oh, I'm smarter than you, I found something that you didn't think about. Rather, it's more that with AI and algorithmically catered information, the sort of algorithmically created echo chamber, to say that it targets you applies some intent, and that might be wrong. Rather, the algorithm is designed to keep you as a product for something like social media, which does bring up the irony that I'm publishing this through social media. But it also creates an avenue of approach for malicious individuals to inject information that might be true, because it might be something like malinformation, into certain milieus, certain cultures, certain groups of people that is specifically intended to incense them to something else. And this is where you get the idea of the self-radicalized individual. And that term, the way that I'm perceiving it right now, is sort of a half-baked answer to a whole host of questions, but it's at least people grasping at straws trying to understand what they're dealing with. And the issue with self-radicalization can be actually, again, told in a little bit of a story, and that is Jamil Javani wrote in his book, Why Young Men, about how extremists would find disenfranchised young men and they would radicalize them through worldviews, through narrative providing worldviews, something that explained all the issues that they were dealing with. And while in our retrospect we might look at, yeah, sure, a young man, maybe a young black man living in a urban-ish environment in a Western country with a Muslim father who disowned him or left the family or whatever it was, while that young man being unmoored from his environment might be attracted to narratives like the Nation of Islam, that would give him justification and even a sense of meaning in life that would oftentimes manifest in the form of terrorism. What we're seeing in our day today is something a little bit more, I wouldn't say incestuous, but insidious. Is that you have the opportunity for malicious information, like just exacerbation of differences and conflicts introduced maybe through maybe by adversarial nations into the American conversation for the specific purpose of incenting violence, incentivizing, not incentivizing, incensing violence. And this might be victim narratives that you are a blank identity. You are a transgender or a Muslim or a Christian or a white male or whatever, that you are this person. And that um, because of you are that thing, you are the downtrodden. Or look at this, egregious display of material about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and how it's praised and it's admired or whatever. And the issue that we see here is a sense of self-radicalization, that the view of the individual departs from making a good world, following morals and ethics and following some sort of system, and instead resulting or reverting to some sort of ends justify the means argument. And so while that doesn't fit within, say, a product description of the Squid Scrim Kit, it is something that has come to light in the last couple months that I think that I have found important to inject into this conversation, and that is this idea of self-radicalization. We might not expect people on, say, the other side of the aisle to engage in some sort of self-reflection. We might not expect the likes of Antifa, who have already been captured by this ideology of hatred, to say, have some matter of self-reflection. But at the same time, we can defend ourselves from being pulled away from what is right and true and good, and instead resort to nearly clearly self-destructive abdication of morality based on circumstances that have been manipulated by individuals who don't even think of you as a target. They are just casting daggers out into the open, hoping that it inflicts a wound somewhere else. I know that there is a verse somewhere in Proverbs about how, a curse uttered in what is it? A curse uttered in recklessness. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's that it doesn't land without consequence, and that while we might think of this as a warning about being careful about our own speech, we can also remind ourselves that part of the way terrorism has evolved is by trying to identify or trying to incite essentially what would be lone wolf actors in an environment where we have really no connection to them, or the person who sent the daggers out has no connection to the person who receives it, radicalizes, and then decides to turn that into violence. Decides that they essentially craft this worldview of malice from bits and pieces of information that unfortunately is they're unable to evaluate because of, say, the education system that they grew up in. And this is why it becomes so much more important to understand, and not even understand, but engage in the evaluation of information. It's not just that cooler heads must prevail, it's that we exist in an environment where the things that you feel strongly about can quickly become manipulated at the cost of what you believe to be the virtue and the thing that is right at the end of the tunnel. The flip side to this is we also feel like, I think we also live in an environment where any commitment, any conviction to something that is right and true and good will immediately be responded with some sort of backlash. And that is where courage once again comes to play. So, if you've enjoyed this miniature lecture, maybe a statement of concern, at the end of me being very thankful to introduce the Squid Scrim Kit to the market for you, you can support us. You can support us really right now by heading over to AXL and picking up one of these. I know there's a limited batch available right now, but we will be producing more. And they have agreed to work with me on this, and that is something that I'm very thankful for. Otherwise, you can head over to redactedllc.com when we have gear or merch available. And finally, the last place is leave a comment below on some piece of equipment that you think has been just missing from the environment, because where I'm at and where I'm thankful now is I may not have the ability to say, go to AXL or go to every company and say, hey, I designed this thing, can you make it work? But this is how in this way we can have some influence on how things can be developed forward. But finally, thank you very much for listening. Thank you. I am happy to be back in the saddle, and I look forward to releasing more episodes with you on philosophy and violence and how we think about these things going forward. It's certainly been a messy environment, but above all things, remain true to what is right and true and good, as well as go forth and conquer.